Welcome to the Early Educator podcast. We talk about everything that you need when it comes to growing your business, overcoming obstacles, and making an impact on not only the children in your care, but to your community and your family. My name is Blake, and today I have the honor and the privilege to be talking to Summer Dixon. She is with Dixon Strategies. She is an advocate for people in business who are looking to succeed and to scale. With 20 years of experience, Summer helps businesses strengthen their leadership, improve their program quality, and build systems that truly support the business and staff. Summer, thank you so much for being here. And I'm just excited.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here. This is going to be fun.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. I'm very, very excited. So I guess we're going to hop in. We have so many things we can talk about. And so I guess I'll just lead in with the first question. This kind of goes into your leadership journey in general. So can you share a little bit about like your personal journey and what experiences like kind of helped to shape the leader that you are today?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have an interesting journey. It's had a lot of twists and turns. But I went to school. Actually, have a background in agriculture of all things, which is a wonderful place to get started. And with that, when I was a kid, I was involved in FFA, and that actually was the National FFA organization. That was the first time I got to be leader and realized that it was like, okay, this is fun. This is a cool way to be a positive influence on other people.
Yeah.
And so went to school and eventually started my corporate career. Was either in the right place or the wrong place at the right time kind of thing. And I ended up with my very first leadership role at about 29 years old. It was something else. And it was a big risk for both me and the organization that I was working for. But what happened was the gentleman that actually hired me into that position ended up becoming my mentor. And I got to, he led me for a good 8 or 9 years. And a lot of the leadership skills I have today, I attribute to watching him and then him actively coaching me and telling me when I did it wrong, pointing that out for me and letting me fix it, right? Like you learn from those things.
Exactly.
And so I led lots of teams in corporate world for about 15 years and several different teams that I led. And then ended up leaving the corporate world several years ago and starting my own firm, my own practice that allows me to work with about 30 CEOs every month and work with some other companies individually. So I get to take all of that I learned, all the mistakes that I made, and help people maybe not make them.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's amazing. And we really think that what the stuff that can really help even educators because, with educators dealing with children a lot, I mean, it is a business that's very important and needed. And so, we're just glad to have you. 100%.
Yeah, my leadership journey actually coincided with my motherhood journey. Like I got my first leadership role the same week I'd given birth to my first child.
Wow.
And I think I'm a better leader because I'm a mom. And because I have children they're not really children anymore, but because I have children in my life, I think that has made me a better leader.
Yeah.
There's a lot of skills you got to learn when you've got babies you're responsible for.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I got a 5-year-old and 6-year-old. And so definitely starting to learn that for sure. Like they really do grow you and develop you in crazy ways.
Well, I'll tell you what, if you can talk a 2-year-old into spitting out whatever it is that they have in their mouth, you can negotiate $1 million deal easily.
Really? Wow.
I promise. It's the same skill set.
Yeah. Wow. That's amazing. Wow. Well, cool. Well, with this journey and learning how to lead others, and of course, you probably know it's just as hard, if not harder, to lead yourself. And so what would you say is like some of the biggest challenges that you face when like learning how to lead yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's the first step. I mean, that is absolutely the first step in anyone's leadership journey. You really cannot lead other people if you can't lead yourself. And so what's critical during that stage is learning what you value.
Okay.
Right? So think long and hard. And it's not that, be honest, have integrity. Yes, all of that's important. That's baseline. Mm-hmm. But what do you really value? Okay. Is it relationships with other people? Is that where you are, or is it are you results based? Because that's a style of leadership for sure. For me personally, I had a tendency early on to overcommit. And I'm also, my experience does not support this because it's a learned behavior, but I'm not that detailed. And so learning how to capture the right details to keep myself on pace or, to inform others, like those were all important things I learned as just in leading myself. Setting goals, having milestones, like all of those things are important, and you can learn them as just leading yourself.
Okay. Gotcha. So, why would you say that leading yourself well is so crucial before you can like lead others effectively? Why is it so important that it has to come from yourself first?
Yeah, so I think leadership is both a privilege and an incredible responsibility. Okay, so I'm gonna pause with that, right? Both things are true. And when you start to become responsible in some way for other people, not capital R responsible, but lowercase r responsible. If you haven't learned to be responsible and hold yourself accountable, it's going to be very difficult to move that into leading others. And so it's a safe place for you to practice, some of those skills and like strengthen those muscles before you're in a position where you're responsible for other people.
Yeah. That's definitely makes sense. I feel like too, with leadership, I feel like if you come to a posture where you try to lead others or tell people what they should do, but they know that you don't reciprocate that for yourself, people can read that pretty easily. So that's what I feel like. But.
Oh, well, yeah, absolutely. So one of my number one leadership tenets maybe is that you best be able to model what you're expecting of other people. Right?
Yeah.
And so you can practice that all day long leading yourself.
Yeah. Definitely. Of course, with this level of like discipline and leadership you have to have for yourself and for others, it feels like it can be hard to stay driven, stay motivated sometimes. Is there anything that you do or know what helps keep you motivated or helps you from getting too overwhelmed or anything like that?
I'm gonna flip this question a little bit on
Okay. Yeah.
If leadership is a thing for you, right? Like, and I'm not talking about just ambition, because there's a lot of people that they want to be in a leadership position because they're super ambitious, which there's nothing wrong with that. But when you are truly driven, like when you've been blessed with that talent, it generally is from a place of how I positively influence other people. You'll hear me use that statement a lot.
Okay.
And when you are really driven by being a positive influence, it's hard to not be motivated. Does that make sense?
Yes.
There are times we only have so much energy and fuel that we can give to other people. And sometimes that, I had to learn that overcommitment thing early on.
Yeah.
Sometimes we give a little too much. And so that means we just need a break and we need to refill our gas tank and then go on. But that's refilling a gas tank is different than lacking motivation. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
You've got to be kind to yourself because you're giving a lot to other people.
Okay. Yeah. That's a really good point. When it comes to like leading a team, what would you say are like some things that really define like really good leadership? Because I feel like too, like with leadership that like you can still lead and get the job done, but I feel like to do great leadership, like you'll have a team that's like happy and willing to go the extra mile, So what do you think is like that defining factor between like leadership and great leadership?
Yeah. Let's just talk about great leadership because we all want to be great leaders, right? Like,
yeah.
Nobody wants to do anything halfway, I don't think. So,
yeah.
There are a couple of things. I think curiosity and we'll kind of dig into these a little bit.
Okay.
But curiosity is critical. I've already mentioned, modeling a behavior that you're looking for. Inclusivity is important. We'll go into that a little bit.
Okay.
And then making sure that your team knows what the answers to the test are. And so we'll talk about that a little bit. So curiosity first.
Okay.
Leading from a place of curiosity. So it's when you walk in and there's a standard operating procedure to open a center, for example, and your opener doesn't follow it. So you could walk in there and be like, what the heck? This list is on the board. But if you walk in there with hey, help me understand. I noticed such and such and such and such, but help me understand what happened this morning. Right? Yeah. Number one, that's more respectful, and you're allowing them to stay kind of in a space of being a human, and you're going to get a whole lot more information because there could be a defect in your process, right? Yeah. So inclusivity, that is leading with the assumption that people come to work every day wanting to do a really good job, and that they are coming to work every day really smart, because why would you pick them for your team, right? So they're coming to work really smart, and they probably know the answers to things, right? So you start including them in the problems. Like, hey, so same example, we've got this process to open the center, and I've noticed 3 out of 5 days XYZ happened. Let's have a conversation. Let's have a conversation about what's broken or what needs to be tweaked there. And then, so the answers to the test, right? Because you're always checking someone's performance as a leader. You're always watching performance. You're always watching the results. Yeah. But if you never told them what your expectation is for behavior or results or metrics, then you are literally giving them a test that they can't pass. And so you've got, you owe it, it's kindness, you owe it to your team to know what you expect of them, to let them know how you define great, and then to praise and reward when that's what's happening, right? Yeah. So those are my 3.
Okay. Yeah. That last part really stuck out to me. Just defining to your team what is good, what is great. I feel like it's something that can be looked over, or it's like vaguely like do your job, and they do their job, but it's like, yeah, we didn't do it this way. But it's like, I did my job, Yeah, that's good.
I talk to leaders a lot, and they assume their team members know. Yeah. And assumption is never a good thing. You really need to communicate your expectations till you're tired of hearing yourself talk. In a kind and loving way, but you need to, because that's the right thing to do. That's the kind people don't want to fail. They do not walk into work every day going, man, I hope I screw this up. Right? Like,
you're right.
That's how it works. Yeah. Yeah. So help them win.
Yeah, for sure. I guess on that topic, is there any other things that you may see like leaders, when it comes to like mistakes they make or things that they may not do or should do more, to show like good leadership to the team?
That's a whole podcast all by itself. Yeah, definitely making assumptions, definitely not having a standard that everyone understands that that's the standard that they need to apply to their work. Being afraid to have tough conversations, that's huge. There's some leaders that resist holding people accountable. Like, something should be done every day at 2:00 and it's done at 2:30, and you don't ever talk to the person that's delaying whatever it is that needs to be done, and or have the conversation with them. That the rest of your team's watching. They're watching you let that not happen.
That's a very good point.
Yeah. Yep. So those are some biggies.
Yeah. So I guess to go a little bit further, how do you think is like a good way to handle holding someone accountable, like a good, because I feel like that can be a tough way to hold someone accountable because you also don't want to make them think like, hey, like you want them to be like, hey, like you still are on payroll, but you're borderline fired. But at the same time, you want to be able to approach them in a respectful way, but also in a stern way that lets them know like, hey, what you're doing is not okay. Do you have any pointers on that when it comes to accountability?
Yeah, I got a couple. So
Okay.
This is one of my sermons. Anybody who's ever been on my team knows I have 5 or 6 sermons. This is one of them.
Okay.
Right? And so I think we worry about being too nice.
Mm-hmm.
And when the truth is that it's more important to be kind, because there's a difference between nice and kind.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
If you really care about the people that you're responsible for, so you really care about your team, you would never let anyone keep doing something incorrectly. Ever. Because they don't want to.
Yeah.
There could be this 1% that really just doesn't, right?
Mm-hmm.
But either they don't know what's expected of them, or they don't know how to do what's expected of them, or they're not in the right role. And you can't address any of those things if you aren't talking about this one little failure or one little miss. Like if you're missing if you're not having those conversations, that's not kind.
Yeah.
Because people really do want to win.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, that's a very good point. She's nice and kind. Yeah.
Yep.
That's good. Well, cool. Let's see. We kind of already talked about this, but when it comes to like handling people through like just like conflict or like tough conversations that are needed, do you have any other things about kind of how to handle like tough conversations? No, we kind of did talk about it a little bit, but yeah.
Yeah, but there's some more tactical things we can talk about. So we dipped into curiosity a little bit, and I'm a big believer when we talk. So let's define it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's define a tough conversation. A tough conversation is having to hold somebody accountable to a result that's not working, or somebody who's coming in late often, or somebody who leaves early often. Like those are tough conversations. I'm not talking about big bads, right? Like I'm not talking about like you broke the law, or like those are different. Those are that's not in the scope of our conversation right now.
Right.
I'm just talking about tough conversations.
Yeah.
And those leading with curiosity, as a leader, not making assumptions. Like you don't want to tell yourself, well, so and so is late 3 out of 5 days a week. They must be lazy, or they must stay up too late and can't get to work. Like, don't do that. Resist that. Come in with a place of curiosity of, hey, I've noticed. Help me understand. Because what you might find out is that if you could adjust their start time by 10 minutes, they'll never be late again. Right? Like there could be something. There's a kiddo drop off. There's something there.
Yeah.
And so start from a place of curiosity. The person that you're speaking with, your team member, also stays more open to you. Right? And you're able to get way more information that is actionable than if you come in too strong or you come soft. And soft is something like, hey, could you try to get to work on time tomorrow? Like that's soft. Yeah. Too hard is kind of the reference I gave you earlier. It's like, you're silly because you can't get in on time. Like, don't do that here. But really starting with a place of curiosity and being willing to be uncomfortable, because sometimes these conversations get uncomfortable, right? And so as a leader, like we don't grow from a place of comfort. So keeping that in mind kind of helps. But if the conversation gets uncomfortable, having the courage to stay in it and stay in a leadership position in that conversation, and don't walk out till it's done, right? Yeah. For the most part, there's some exceptions to that, but don't walk out till it's done.
Okay. Yeah. So I think one thing with like our educators, I'm sure there's situations where they're dealing with somebody on staff who maybe is doing something wrong or incorrectly, or they need to talk to a staff member, but with them, they have children all day. How would you recommend them to handle a situation when they are around children and they don't want to bring that stuff in front of the kids, right? What would you recommend for something like that?
So that's actually an interesting situation, or it's a challenging situation, right? And
Yeah.
so one of the things that I meant to get into with one of your earlier questions and got off track because that's what I do, is you can't always be having, the only conversation you have with a team member can't always be a tough one.
Okay.
Right? So you need to catch people doing things really well.
Mm.
And because that, there's some folks that'll refer to that kind of like as a bank account. So if you're encouraging and caring and being kind and, hey, you followed that process really well, or, oh my gosh, that kiddo, you did a great job with that crisis we had with the kiddo. Like doing that adds to that bank. And so when you need to have that tough conversation, you've already developed this great rapport and like a mutual respect, right?
Yeah.
But when you've got these situations because you don't want to have those tough conversations in front of kiddos, but those positive ones, you bet you can. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. You can praise somebody all day long because that also the kids are watching them too. Like those kids, they learn from us all the time. But use that opportunity to really praise and to encourage and to just reinforce good behavior. The tougher conversations, I know it's tough, especially when we have folks that work hourly, right? So there's a couple ways you can handle it. One is carving time out, like making sure that you've got another caregiver available so that you can pull them into a private room. If it's a really tough conversation, I would do it at end of shift so that they don't have to go back to the kiddos. They can go ahead and go home and process the information that they've got. So that's an option. Okay. Definitely that, because you want to just allow people to maintain their own personal integrity, right? And so that would allow that to do that. Like that end of shift piece would be super helpful for that.
Okay. Cool. Okay. So I'm sure that there's things you put in place or whatever where people won't agree with it. So there might be some like resistance or some negativity towards some things going on. Or maybe worst case, I imagine like a team member gets other team members to kind of like gang up. How do you recommend dealing with something like that?
Yeah. So the first thing is that as a leader, you have to accept that it is human nature to resist change. Okay? If I have a team of 5 and I tell them that they have to stop using blue ink in their pens and switch to red ink, I guarantee you at least one person will come to me privately and say, blue is my favorite color. Why do I have to do this? And another person is going to come and they're going to say, I don't like red.
Yeah.
I mean, you could switch it to green or black or whatever. I just don't like red. And I don't care what the change is. There will be resistance. And so as a leader, if you just accept that and start to anticipate, have some intentional time to think through yourself, like what would you anticipate some of the challenges be to change or to whatever it is that you're doing, then you can think through how to react. But communication's key and explaining why. Right? Okay. So like if we keep running with this ink example, let's say it's a regulatory issue, it's a compliance issue. They said this document has to be written in red. Right? And explaining, hey, you explain why. Or gosh, we got a deal on these red pens. Right? Like I'm saving this $25 a month on these red pens. Just explain why and explain it 6 or 7 times. Explain it again so you're sick of hearing yourself talk. Because any adult, they need to hear something, hear, read, see, whatever. Yeah. But be exposed to something 6 or 7 times before it's truly comprehended. And so it can't be one and done, especially if it's a big change. And then give your folks an opportunity to process whatever it is, and then carve out time, either individually or as a group, for them to ask questions then don't be afraid to say, I don't know. If they ask you a question that you can't answer, I don't know, I will look into it and I'll get back to you. Right?
Yeah.
So
cool.
They teach entire courses on change management. So that was the down and dirty.
Nice.
A few minutes. Yeah.
Cool. For somebody who maybe there's some people that don't see themselves naturally as like a leader, but they do show tendencies to like want to grow in like even their space or go to level, whatever. What would you advise someone like that who has that kind of a mindset?
Yeah, that's yes. Because I don't really think people are born leaders.
Okay.
But we got to start with my belief system, right? Are there some leadership talents that people are? Yes, absolutely. Like I think of my youngest son, like he's going to be coordinating the basketball game on the playground, right? Like he's the one who's got to get all the kids to play basketball, right? But there's a lot of skills and a lot of like leadership muscle he would have to develop to be ready to lead actual humans in the work world, right?
Yeah.
And so if that is of interest, the best thing to do is find a couple people that can really mentor you. Hopefully it's within your organization. And when I talk about mentor, that can be formal, it can be informal, it can be somebody at church, like it doesn't matter who it is, but somebody that you view as a leader that has integrity, that shares some values that you share. Open up to them, because I'll tell you, being vulnerable when you've never been in a leadership position or telling somebody, I would like to be in a leadership position, saying that out loud is really hard the first time. And talking to them about how they got in their leadership role, or things that they need to learn, or what skills do you see in me that I could leverage to help, or what gaps maybe do you see in my skill sets that I should work on that's important. The other, if you're actually in an organization, so say you're a care provider in one of the centers and you'd like to be maybe a director role, you've got to tell your leader, right? You have to verbalize it, because the days that if I work hard, people will notice it and promote me automatically. I think that's a thing of the past. But you've got to raise your hand and not be afraid to go first, not be afraid to volunteer. And so talk to your leader about, hey, man, this is my path. This is what I'm interested in. Can you help me? I've never had anybody turn down my request for help. And most people don't. Most people get real excited to help somebody else.
Yeah.
So you've got to say it out loud first thing.
Yeah. Well, cool. I know you mentioned this kind of the very beginning of the podcast, but how you had a mentor and someone to lead you how to do things. So what do you think for somebody, maybe they have someone who has shown that interest, or think they have that interest in potentially being in a higher role, or to even taking their position one day. What do you think is like the most effective way to be like an effective mentor towards someone?
So that depends. It really depends on the people.
Okay.
For me personally, like having formal 1 hour sit downs once a week, that's not, I move really fast. And for me to hold all my questions, or to not get feedback for like a whole week or a whole month and have to save it for this hour is painful. I just move fast. And so like what worked for me is, in this particular case, if I had a question, I texted. If I had a question, I called. I didn't overuse it. I didn't abuse it, right? Or if I had made a mistake, I would call him right away. This is the mistake I made. This is what I believe will fix it. What do you think? And then he was very clear with me. That's actually a great example of it. He was pretty clear with me that I could bring him anything, but he trained me to know that he's going to ask me what I think first. And so just having a very open communication or open conversation about what that relationship might look like. is very, very helpful, and having just a mutual agreement about it. Like, hey, are you the person I can call when something comes up, or would you rather have something structured? Because everybody's different. Everybody's different.
Yeah. So I think one thing I heard from that was like allowing that person when they ask you a question, instead of you just giving them the straight answer, give them the opportunity to own that kind of.
Yeah. So that comes from one of my core beliefs.
Yeah.
One of my core beliefs is that everybody knows what they need to do.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that there's like either they're too emotionally attached to it, or maybe there's a little bit more data they need, or there's something. And so asking really good, goes back to curiosity. It always does. Asking really good questions when you're the mentor. So asking really good questions of what do you think? If you didn't have me to talk to, what would you do? And then you can start guiding. And occasionally you just need to be prescriptive and say, hey, I've been in this situation. This is what I did. This worked. This didn't work. Sometimes you get there, right? But allowing people to kind of use their brain, that's what builds that muscle.
Mm. Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Well, I think that's all the questions I have for this one. We're going to definitely have to have like a part 2. That's going to have to be a thing. These are great conversations. Yeah. Is there anything else that you want to mention or think you should mention at all about, anything with educators or how they lead?
I love your audience.
Awesome.
Yeah, I love your audience. Like as a mama of 2 almost men, I couldn't do what I do professionally had it not been for amazing care providers that my kiddos had the blessing of being with. I just never had a bad experience, and just have a deep respect for those that are willing to love other people's faith. So
awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, if there was an educator who would like to reach out to you or anything, what would be the best way for them to do that?
LinkedIn. LinkedIn's always best. Search for Summer Dixon and find me there. I accept almost every connection request, unless it's like a prince from another country. I just
All right. Is there like a website or anything you want to mention as well they can look at?
Happy to look at DixonStrategies.com. It's DIXON Strategies.
Okay. Sounds good. You heard it. Okay. That sounds good. Well, Summer, thank you so much for your time. And like I said, we'll get together again, hopefully in the near future, and do something else. But if you enjoyed it, definitely let us know. And if you have any questions or topics you'd like for us to discuss, definitely let us know, either in the comments or some whatever way works best for you. But thank you so much for watching this episode, and we'll see you next time.